$4.1 billion worth of Bitcoin and Ethereum options expire today. In the meantime, war escalations continue, but Bitcoin is pumping exactly as we've been discussing on the channel. In today's video, we'll be going over the recent Bitcoin price action, what we should be expecting in the upcoming days, weeks, and months, and we'll also be going over some of the most recent news. If you enjoy the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Let's jump right into the video. So first off, as I intro this video, over $4 billion worth of Bitcoin and Ethereum options expire today, and for the stock market, $6.8 trillion worth of options on stock indexes, ETFs, equity index futures, and individual stocks are set to expire during today's trading session. 6.8 trillion, that is a lot. This is potentially the biggest triple witching OPEX on record, according to Spot Gamma estimates. It will be the first monthly post-holiday OPEX in at least 25 years. And just quickly taking a look at this graphic, we can see that it is indeed a huge day. Now let's jump into the Bitcoin price action because that's probably what you care about most. Now, if we take a look here, we can see that we are indeed holding the monthly open as support. I told you that we would not just be immediately crashing after continuing to hold this level as support. Now, when you're trading, it's okay to look at the 4-hour time frame, sometimes go as low as the 1-hour time frame, and only experienced traders should really be trading on the 15-minute time frame and lower. However, when you really want to zoom out and get a nice picture as to where the market could be headed, I always recommend at the bare minimum to look at the daily time frame. So we can see here that this red line, the monthly open, is now holding as support. So what's next for Bitcoin? Because as we've been covering on the channel, there is still a lot of liquidity to the upside. However, with this most recent pump today, we are starting to see a lot more people starting to pile into longs. And I think that this is the event that will bring us up and then down into a choppy summer, as I've been discussing on the channel. So if I go on the 4-hour time frame, we can see that we're experiencing a little bit of resistance at a very important level, which is around 106.2K on the chart, $106,160. Again, the reason why this is so important, as I disclosed in my last video, is the fact that we never actually had daily closes above this level until the most recent all-time high. And so it only made sense that this would start acting a little bit as resistance. As we can see on the 4-hour time frame, if I zoom in here, we got a pretty massive wick above and then close below. Now, if we break back above this level and hold it as support, there is a strong likelihood that we target $107,000, even $108,000. And at that point, the question is, will we start to have resistance? Because as we can see on the chart, we are forming a little bit of a pennant. And so what you want to consider here is that, will we just continue to chop around, or will we go ahead and move higher into this region? We could have some fake outs from here, but as you can tell on the chart, we are forming this pattern before the next big breakout. And while this pattern continues to build up, let's take a look at the liquidity chart. We can see that on the 3-day time frame, we went up and grabbed a lot of the more aggressive short liquidity. Now, there is still a ton of liquidity right around $109,000 to $111,000. At some point, I'm absolutely convinced that we will go to these higher valuations near the previous all-time high, grab that liquidity before going lower. So right now, though, we are seeing some longs enter the market. And if we take a look at a bit of a bigger picture here, Bitcoin exchange liquidation map, one of my favorite charts, been covering it on the channel for ages now, but you can see that on the left here, the cumulative long liquidation leverage is really starting to build up. Just yesterday in my community, I showed you that there were about 2 times more shorts in the market than longs. However, as we talked about on the channel, whenever we have one green candle for Bitcoin, everyone just starts piling into longs. Whenever we have one red candle for Bitcoin, everyone starts piling into shorts. It's too obvious at this point. And you can see now that they're almost even, around $12.4 billion worth of cumulative short liquidation leverage. And then on the other side, around $10.3 billion worth of cumulative long liquidation leverage. So you can see right here that we are getting in between the high liquidity zones. And what I mean by this is we're starting to establish a bit of an even distance on both sides. We can see that between around $102,000 up to around 103.5K, this is a high liquidity zone where a lot of people went long. But the more and more that Bitcoin does pump, the closer we get to this liquidity zone, which is right around $109,000. And afterwards, there's of course a little bit of a gap, But once we get into that all-time high territory, of course, that was an area where a lot of people went short. So the question is, where do we go first? It's been relatively easy to nail each move because of how the liquidity charts were looking. More liquidity to the upside means a lot of people were shorting the market, and so I was fully expecting a pump for Bitcoin, as we discussed in my past 2 videos. Now that we're starting to see this balance out, and we still know that there's more shorts in the market, maybe we're favoring a little bit more upside. However, if we go back to this chart, I do think that we could get capped out around $108,000. Now let's see what happens, because we do know for a fact that the more and more that Bitcoin continues to trickle on up, the more and more people start entering longs. And that's when we immediately get that flush to the downside. And as you know, one of my base cases during the summer is that it is highly likely, in fact, I am very confident that we will be seeing Bitcoin back below $100,000, likely into the mid to low 90K range at some point. Now, it might sound crazy for me calling that, seeing as we just got a pump, but I firmly believe this to be the case. Now, in the meantime, as Bitcoin continues to chop around, we know for a fact that Ethereum continues to chop around as well. And this is the daily time frame. We can see that we're just going back and forth and back and forth. And the funny thing here is, if we take a look at the weekly time frame, this is comical. I mean, guys, look at these wicks on the Ethereum chart. What does this tell you? A lot of indecision since we had that big breakout from the lows where Bitcoin went ahead and hit $74,500 and Ethereum made its way all the way down to just below $1,400. Now, if you're in my free community, you know that I was vocal about accumulating Ethereum between $1,450 all the way up to around $1,600, and obviously it played out very nicely. That reminds me, if you want to join my free community, you have the first link in my description down below. You can see we have some nice trade setups in my signals group, but in this community as well, I do show a little bit more of my daily life, some news, and what we should be expecting in the market as it pertains to my next upcoming videos. So if you enjoy that kind of content on a daily basis and you want a more private group, I would highly recommend that you join this one, where I can show you everything that I see on the charts regularly. Now back to the charts. If we take a look at the total crypto market cap, this of course includes Bitcoin. We can see that we did set an all-time high this cycle, but now we're looking like we want to move higher. And the only reason why this move is dragged higher is because Bitcoin has been outperforming the rest of the market and really dragging the rest of the market up with it. Because if we take a look at the total 2 crypto market cap, which is essentially everything excluding Bitcoin, we can see that we weren't even able to make an all-time high this cycle compared to the last. We wicked close to it at around the $1.64 trillion level, but the previous all-time high was right around $1.71 trillion. And right now we are experiencing a little bit of resistance right around $1.25 trillion. And so my base case was that everything excluding Bitcoin would likely continue to chop down lower. Now, of course, if Bitcoin gets an aggressive pump, then we'll probably target this trend line once again, but I do think that it will continue to act as resistance until altcoins are really about to break out. And with the most recent FOMC meeting, interest rates staying exactly the same, quantitative tightening continuing, I still don't think that altcoins are the right play. And if we just take another quick look at Bitcoin dominance, here's exactly why. We're likely going to move higher and higher and higher and higher. Even when we get these big red candles, they get eaten up just like that. And so I do think that Bitcoin dominance will make its way above 66% dominance. And then the real question is, will we make our way into the 70% range? That is a huge call. I'm not that convinced quite yet. So we'll have to see how things develop as we go on to 66% dominance, hold that level as support, and then let's assess. And you know, we just spoke about rate cuts, but the Fed Governor Waller says that the central bank could cut rates as early as July. So this is something to consider. Everyone's already getting excited about this, but I wouldn't be too excited quite yet as we continue to head into a choppy summer. I will stand firm on my base case there. And the last thing I want to show you that was extremely interesting on my Twitter, you know you have a deficit spending crisis when the president is calling for a 250 basis point rate cut, the US is on the brink of joining a war against Iran, CPI inflation has fallen towards the Fed's 2% target, tariffs rates are near their highest in history, and the Fed began rate cuts with a 50 basis point cut for the first time since 2008. Yet, interest rates keep on rising. Look at the rise of these interest rates. This tells you that there is something seriously wrong. Now, back to the Bitcoin chart before I wrap up this video, I still think that we will firmly chop around during the summer, and we will be liquidating both sides. Right now, if we can break above the 106.2K level and hold it as support, as I talked about earlier in the video, I do think that we are primed for an upside, but we know that there will be some resistance around $107,000 to $108,000. Break above that level, and then we're likely to target the liquidity around the previous all-time high. But ultimately, I do think that Bitcoin will still find its way back below $100,000 this summer and likely into the low 90K range. And as I wrap up this video, I want you to keep taking a look at the liquidation heat maps because it really does paint the full picture, especially this one, the Bitcoin exchange liquidation map. I shared it with you before on the channel, but ultimately, here's what you should expect. As Bitcoin continues to rise, and let's say we make it to $108,000, what will happen is you'll start to see that the cumulative long liquidation leverage continues to rise and more people start exiting their shorts. So then this line on the left will be higher than the line on the right, which is the cumulative short liquidation leverage. And then what happens is as we continue into the summer chop, we will likely have Bitcoin moving lower and liquidating a lot of those longs until we keep on going back and forth. And then after the summer period is when I do think we will have a sustained breakout for Bitcoin. And that sums up today's video. Ahead of the weekend, Bitcoin did get a pretty nice pump, liquidating a lot of the more aggressive shorts in the market. Now, are we going to move higher and trickle on to $108,000, liquidate some more shorts, or is it time for us to already move lower? As we continue to see more and more longs start piling into the market, keep your eyes on the liquidation map, which will tell you exactly where the price could be headed next. If you enjoy the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. And don't forget, I have a free community down below, which is the first link down below. I'll see you inside and see you in tomorrow's video.